Good evening, everyone. I am Judy Reese-Morse, President and CEO of the Urban League of Louisiana. Welcome to this evening's candidate forum, featuring candidates running for Council at Large and Council District B. We are so glad that you've made time in your schedule to hear from the individuals you'll see on the ballot on November 13th. The Urban League is hosting forums like this one to give you the opportunity to hear directly from those who are seeking your vote. We want you to hear firsthand about the vision that each candidate has for our community so that you are able to make an informed decision when you cast your ballot. The Urban League of Louisiana is deeply committed to voter education, voter engagement, and voter mobilization. Our Wake Up, Go Vote initiative is a statewide effort that allows us to work with you to engage and to take action that will lead to a stronger, thriving, prosperous community statewide. We believe that your vote is your voice, and we want the voices of our communities to be heard loud and clear. The first step is getting to know who your choices are for elective office. As many of you know, the Urban League has a long history of fighting for voting rights for African Americans. Nationally, the fight continues to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And while passage in the House of Representatives does show progress, there is still work to be done in the Senate. We ask you to add your voice to the work of the National Urban League as they continue to advocate for passage of this important civil rights legislation. Here in Louisiana, work is being done every day to promote voter engagement and to protect against voter suppression of any kind. We have been proud to stand with the Power Coalition for Equity and Justice in support of voter fairness and equity. We are also very proud to partner with the Power Coalition on hosting this evening's forum. It is my pleasure to invite Ashley Shelton, the dynamic founder, president, and CEO of the Power Coalition for Equity and Justice, to share a few words of welcome. Good evening, Ashley.
Good evening. Thank you so much, Judy. And as you said, it is always a pleasure to partner with the Urban League of Louisiana to fight for equity and justice in our state and certainly in our communities throughout the state. And so grateful for the opportunity to partner and certainly to create spaces where we continue to do voter engagement, voter education around issues important to communities. And so this forum tonight will be focusing on the council at large, as well as District B. It's important for folks to get to know the candidates, to understand where they fall on the issues. We've come up with what we think are some really good questions. And so we hope that our candidates, take time and help help their constituents understand where they're coming from on these issues. And again, to much to Judy's point, so much of what's important is really about showing up. Your vote is your voice, is your power. This particular election season, we do not, in addition to the municipal races that we have in New Orleans, we also have 4 constitutional amendments on the ballot that we're going to also need folks to weigh in on. And so we are grateful for the opportunity to be here tonight and to hear from the candidates. And then we are also excited to continue to engage the community around voting in every election, doing those things that we always say: vote in every election, bring 5 people with you, engage with 5 people in your family or your close circle, and ensure that they vote. And then certainly too, we'll have sample ballots and other resources on our website at powercoalition.org if you have deeper questions about anything that's on the ballot. And so I'm grateful to be here, very thankful to partner with the Urban League, and look forward to tonight's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashley. And again, we are so honored to be able to work with you and your organization on these issues. I now want to introduce our moderator for this evening. She is Jessica Williams, the Deputy Investigations Editor for The Advocate and the Times-Picayune. Jessica has been with The Advocate since 2015. Before, she covered New Orleans politics, education, transportation, and affordable housing. Before joining The Advocate, she covered public education for the Times-Picayune and for The Lens. She is a native New Orleanian and a graduate of Loyola University. It is my pleasure to welcome our moderator, Jessica Williams. Hi, Jessica.
Hi, Judy, and thanks so much for that introduction. And thank you, candidates, for joining us tonight and for giving the voting public a chance to hear your visions for the public offices that you are seeking to hold. As you heard, the Urban League of Louisiana and the Power Coalition for Equity and Justice are hosting this and other forums to give you all, the voting public, a chance to learn more about the candidates you will see on your ballots this November. Tonight, we are joined by candidates for the New Orleans City Council for at-large Divisions 1 and 2 and District B. The night will be split into two parts. We will first hear from the candidates for both at-large seats, and then we will move to the candidates for City Council District B. The questions for each group of candidates have been designed by the Urban League and the Power Coalition to focus on issues they both hear about regularly from the communities they serve and advocate on behalf of. Topics such as racial equity, equitable workforce, economic opportunity, and more. All candidates were invited to participate in the forum, and all candidates received the questions in advance. I will introduce the candidates running for the two at-large seats and ask them to provide opening statements to introduce themselves. All voters in New Orleans will vote for both at-large seats. For at-large Division 1, we have Mr. Kenneth Cutno, and for at-large Division 2, we have Mr. Bart Everson, Ms. Kristen Gilson Palmer, and Mr. John Paul J.P. Morrell. And if we could start with Mr. Cutno, if you could provide a brief statement introducing yourself to our viewers tonight.
Good evening, and I thank the Urban League and the Power Coalition for this opportunity. As Jessica stated, I am Kenneth Cutno. I was born in the city of New Orleans. I'm a graduate of Southern University with a degree in political science and a minor in criminal law. I also am a graduate of LSU Law Enforcement Academy. I believe that we need somebody in Division 1 with experience and qualification to carry this city and to move this city forward. I am running against the incumbent who has been in office for over a decade, and our conditions is still the same. For the last 4 years, our condition has not changed. The same issues we are facing today, we was facing 4 years ago. Crime, infrastructure, sewage and water board, energy, and many, many more issues. And this year, after the storm, we are looking at trash pickup. I have played an important role in building affordable housing, which is the River Garden, a $366 million development. And we bought the Walmart with a public and private partnership, which is a $20 million development. And we built the first early child care facility in the city of New Orleans called the Mahalia Jackson School on Jackson Avenue, which is another $20 million development. I have created jobs. I have taken the taxes from the Walmart and paid for housing, retail development, small business development within that Central City area. And today, when you look at that development, the Walmart and the River Garden and retails and the small businesses, you're looking at $1 billion economic impact to the city of New Orleans. We have the resources, we have the tools. We just need the leadership to move this city forward. I am the only candidate that has built more affordable housing in the city of New Orleans for the people of this city. With me as your council at large, I will be able to put together more public and private partnerships, more houses, and the opportunity to build more schools. And let me remind everybody, I am not an elected person. I'm a public servant. I have done more for this community than the person that is in this position as council at large. We just need new leadership to bring the money to our community and to rebuild this community. And the people, y'all deserve better. Y'all deserve a council person with the experience and qualification that cares about the people and not the next election. I'm asking you to please stand.
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up so we can move to the next candidate.
I'm asking you to please stand with me as I run for the city council at large position in Division 1. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Bart Everson. Mr. Everson, please introduce yourself and tell voters a little bit about you. You have 1 minute.
Jessica. Thank you, Jessica. I have to confess, I am kind of a reluctant candidate. I was, in fact, kind of drafted into this race. This summer, I was approached by a kind of a loose network of social justice advocates. They asked a number of people if they would consider running for office, particularly to bring attention to climate change, which is the biggest crisis facing humanity. You know, it's been on the front page of the newspaper. We've heard that it's code red for humanity. Everything that we love about this place and this world, in fact, is at risk. So this needs to be at the forefront of all of our policy discussions. And given the fact that New Orleans is at the forefront, is one of the most vulnerable cities in the world, we need to be at the forefront of meeting this challenge. So I got out of my comfort zone to run for office, and really with the climate crisis is asking us all to get out of our comfort zones.
Thank you so much, Mr. Everson. And now, Councilmember Kristen Gilson Palmer, if you could please introduce yourself to voters.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for having me. My name is Kristen Gilson Palmer. I currently sit on the New Orleans City Council for District C. I'm from New Orleans. My family has been here for many years. My father was a federal prosecutor. My mom was a school teacher, and I'm one of 8 children. And my history was built in service to the community. Also in consensus building. You can imagine being one in a family of 10. And, I brought that with me to service. I started out working, and also kind of like Bart, I never really wanted to be in politics. I started working in the communities, working with neighborhood associations. When I first started volunteering in Hope House in the St. Thomas housing development, working there. And from there, I went on to become a director of Rebuilding Together and working with neighborhoods all across the city, rebuilding houses for vulnerable populations. And, I really believe, and that brought me into this district council seat, and it's been really rooted in working with the neighborhoods and communities, and again, also rooted in service. And I think when we ask our politicians to serve, we should look at that, and we should see how they then carry them out within the district council. And within a district council seat, we all know that we're focusing on quality of life issues that face us every day, from crime to blight, and to inequity that exists in all of our different governmental structures. And so really that is why I believe that we need somebody with that background at large, so that we can really focus on the systemic issues that are really facing the city. And I feel that having that district council background, where you're in the neighborhoods every day, working with the community, that we need that perspective at large. And that is why I'm putting myself out to service once again. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Councilmember Palmer. And last but not least, we have Mr. JP Morrell. Mr. Morrell, if you would please introduce yourself to viewers.
Thank you, Jessica. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. My name is JP Morrell. I began my career of public service actually as a public defender in the wake of Hurricane Katrina, which, when you talk about a trial by fire, there's probably no greater definition. At times after Katrina, when I was representing a community that had been historically underrepresented, mostly the poor, mostly other Black people, scattered across the state, and trying to figure out how to return them home and get them the rights that they deserved, that was a full-time job. It was a full-time, difficult job that left me with a clear desire to fix things, because things in the city before Katrina were broken, but Katrina really showed how those different issues had existed for years and really brought them to the light. I served as a state senator and a legislator for over 13 years. And in that time, I had the opportunity to work with a lot of great organizations, for example, like the Urban League of Louisiana and the Power Coalition, to do a lot of great things for the state of Louisiana. We achieved so much in that 13 years. We did so much with equal pay, fair pay for equal work. We made so many gains with that. We got those bills further than ever gone. We got the ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment out of Senate committee to the Senate floor. We did things like challenging the federal minimum wage in a real, meaningful way, and forcing uncomfortable dialogues. And more importantly, I know for both these organizations that are having this forum tonight, we fought for criminal justice reform on the state level. I would be remiss to not mention the aid the Urban League and Power Coalition brought to the tremendous fight we had to end non-unanimous juries in the state of Louisiana. And with their help, I was able to author a constitutional amendment to repeal 135 years of Jim Crow. That kind of leadership, bringing groups together to solve problems, is what we need to solve the problems that plague this city. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Morrell. And now we'll move on to the questions. Each candidate will have a chance to respond to each question. And for the first set of questions, we are asking for 30-second responses per candidate per question. The first question is this, and I'll start with Mr. Cutno. What do you think are the most important functions of a council person? As a reminder, you have 30 seconds.
The most important function, I believe, is the number one issue is to make yourself available for the community, to be in contact and in connection and in constant contact with your constituents, to make sure that you understand what the issues in their community is concerned. And naturally, we have making sure that we adjust the budget. The people would like their funds allocated to programs that are designed for the people. And I believe that we need to take the funds, the budget, and look at the people needs and allocate those funds. Like right now, we have $388 million from the American Rescue Act plan. Let's take the money and design it and allocate it to programs that will help the community. Like for instance, sewage and water board. We could
Mr.
buy.
Cutno, I'm going to have to cut you off right there just to make sure that we're staying to time. Thank you so much. And now we'll move on to our council member, or to Mr. Bart Everson, who is going to also be asked to respond to the question, what do you think are the most important functions of a council person? Mr. Everson, the floor is yours.
Thank you. To my understanding, the council is the legislature of the city. So its primary function is legislation, making the rules and making the laws. The other branches, the mayor and the judges and so forth, they interpret or implement or execute the law. But the council makes the laws, and thus, and because they're making the laws, they're basically setting the course for the city. The other important function that goes along with that is just advocacy. Sometimes it's outside of your jurisdiction, but you have to advocate for things because the council is really the elected representatives who are closest to the people. So I see council members as articulating a vision for our future, if we are even, to have a future.
Thanks so much, Mr. Everson. Councilmember Palmer, posing the same question to you. What do you think are the most important functions of a council person?
So there's this wonderful man that comes to almost every single council meeting and talks. And I had a conversation with him after one. And he said, the most important thing that y'all do is to have this public and open process. I have issues. I can't go to the mayor and talk to them. I can't go to other people and talk to them, or different department heads. But I always have that opportunity here in council chambers to voice my concerns and my issues. And I do think that is perhaps one of the best things that the council can do and provide, is that open public forum. Beyond that, and specific to what our duties are, is obviously passing the budget, right? And so the administrative branch sets the budget, and it's really the council that has to oversee that budget and ensure that it's done wisely. And then the second is land use. And we all know that land use can really impact every single neighborhood. And one small issue can really do that. And so it's very important when we talk about moving forward, especially at large, to have that kind of experience to really serve the city well.
Thanks so much, Councilmember Palmer. And now, Mr. Morrell, moving on to you. What do you think are the most important functions of a council person?
The most important functions, obviously, and Bart summed it up pretty quickly, is legislation and advocacy. I think people in this city for a very long time have felt like we are in the most progressive city in the entire state of Louisiana, and our activism as a council reflects that we do not live up to that reputation. As a legislator, as you know, Jessica, because you covered the legislature, most legislators filed 4 bills a year. I filed 40 because when I see problems, I want to solve them. This council has never had that level of production to try and solve the problems that plague the city in meaningful ways. As the next council person at large, I will create and work for a city that reflects our progressive values, and I will work tirelessly to finally address the problems that have plagued us for decades and generations.
Thanks so much, Mr. Morrell. Let's mix it up for the next question. We're going to start with you, Mr. Morrell, and work our way back to Mr. Cutno. And the next question is, how do you plan as a council person to engage with residents of your district when you are elected? And Mr. Morrell, the floor is again yours. You have 30 seconds.
Well, I think one of the things the council has never done is actually hold council meetings at a time when average voters can attend. As you know, council meetings are typically held at 11 a.m. on a weekday. That's worse than the legislature as far as making sure the lobbyists show up, but not the people. What I would do is for truly controversial issues or issues that have significant public interest, I would have those meetings in the afternoon when people actually can attend them and show up maybe with their kids and actually participate in government. So that's one of the things we need to make the council more accessible, both in when it meets and to embrace the internet and make sure that there's a more robust comment period on issues like the Army Corps of Engineers does, for example, with allowing comment periods to go over multiple days for people for the council to meet people where they're at.
Thanks so much, Mr. Morrell. Moving back to Councilmember Palmer, how do you plan to engage with the residents of your district if you are elected? And just a reminder, the at-large seat covers the whole city. So we're speaking of the entire city of New Orleans.
Right. Thank you so much. And actually, the former senator is actually wrong. It was tried my first term in office, having night meetings, and they really were not, unfortunately, as well attended. So I really think it's very incumbent upon us to ensure other ways of engaging the community. I have a very long track record of doing that through creating citizen-led commissions and committees. We did that with our STAC and how we were able to pass transformative legislation called Complete Streets. I created park committees in order to look at when we had a certain amount of money, where it goes. And I let the citizens decide where that money goes into which parks and how we want that utilized. I also use our committee structures for further engagement, which is very important. And then more than that, I go out into the neighborhoods and we have coffees that have no agendas, because not everybody belongs to a neighborhood association. Not everybody belongs to a church. Not everybody belongs to or is a lobbyist, like one of my opponents. So I do think it's very important to really be out there in the neighborhoods and the communities. And I have a very strong track record of doing that. I mean, that's my history. When I was director of a nonprofit, I would only work with neighborhoods where our presence was requested. And then they would partner with us. They would sit on our board. They would help us locate houses and homeowners to assist. And so that's where I stand, and I continue to do that and advocate for my communities.
Thanks so much, Councilmember Palmer. And now moving to Mr. Everson, same question. How do you plan to engage with the residents of the city if you are elected?
Well, I would advocate, even if I'm not elected, I advocate for increasing the number of council districts. The current ratio is 78,000 people per council member. That's like 5 times higher than St. Louis or Nashville. If we lower that ratio, that should increase accessibility, accountability, engagement. I mean, it just stands to reason. And that would mean more grassroots democracy, which is a practice that we're sadly lacking in the actual practice of democracy. The lack of democratic practice, in fact, is one of the contributing factors to many of the social problems that we have, including the climate crisis. Why we don't see progress or action on these issues is because we don't actually practice democracy.
Thanks so much, Mr. Everson. And last but not least, Mr. Cutno, how do you plan to engage with the residents of the city if you are elected?
Let's go back to your first question, community engagement. I believe that once a person gets elected, they forget the reality of why they was elected. The people select you to be the voice for the people. You are there to represent the interests of the people. So you must constantly be in constant contact with the community. Town hall meeting, go to churches, go to community events, even weddings and kiss the babies, as they used to say back in the old days. But you must constantly do a community engagement process in order to understand what the concerns are in your community. And so we must remember that we represent the people. We are the voice for the people. It's not what we desire or how we look at things. It's what the people need and what the people see that we should be addressing. And I believe we must do that by engaging community, constantly having a community engagement with the community and the people that you are representing as they representatives, a representative.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cutno. And our next question is about the greatest parts of the district, or the city in this case. What do you see as the greatest assets of the city? And Mr. Cutno, I will pose that question to you. As a reminder, you have 30 seconds.
The people of this city is the greatest asset. We are hard workers. We bounce back quick. I know I grew up in this city, and I watch the people build this city without any government assistance, when it was just the everyday average Joe. So the people is the most important thing. I'm sorry. It's the greatest thing that ever happened to the city. The gumbo, the food, the tourists, the Bourbon Street, everything. We have the greatest city in the world. And that's why 10 million tourists flocked to this city last year, because of our uniqueness.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cutno. Mr. Everson, posing the same question to you. What do you think are New Orleans's greatest asset?
Well, I kind of agree with Mr. Cutno. From a human perspective, it's our unique culture. And people talk about food, they talk about music, festivals, parades, but I believe it's something more than that all those things flow from. They flow from something that's a little harder to define, but that we might call a spirit, or the love of life, or the soul of the city. There's a certain kind of way of looking at life that people have here that we don't see in a lot of other places. And that's what makes the city great. That's what's most valuable, I think. But of course, all of this stuff that we love is at risk. This is why I'm running for office, because I feel we face an existential threat as a city because of climate change.
Thank you so much, Mr. Everson. Councilmember Palmer, posing the same question to you. What do you see as the greatest assets of New Orleans?
Well, I think we all are in violent agreement that it is the people of this city. The greatest honor I've had of representing District C is that it's the only district that's reflective of the city as a whole. It's majority African-American, Vietnamese, Hispanic. We have the largest LGBTQ population. We're on both sides of the river. We're urban, we're suburban, we're historic, we're non-historic. And that, along with obviously being one of 8 kids, really teaches you to build consensus and to listen to all parties, which we get, obviously it's one of the greatest joys, quite frankly, of serving this city. And it really shows also a lot of the inequities. I think, from this vantage point, you see how geography can give you access and how it doesn't give you access. Where you live. And I believe that every neighborhood should have equal access, and every neighborhood should live in safety and in beauty. And those are often things that don't happen, but the people deserve it, because our people are our number one asset.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Palmer. Mr. Morrell, posing the same question to you. What do you see as the greatest assets of New Orleans?
Jessica, it shouldn't be this hard to live in a city you love. And that's what I hear from the community whenever I'm out, before this campaign and during it. I'd agree with my opponents to some degree that it is the citizens of the city, but I would go further. It's the community and those communities that live in the city that are slowly being gentrified and chased out by a combination of economic inequity, short-term rentals, opportunistic land developers and house flippers who price people out of their houses, and rising property taxes. We do not protect the people who live in the city. We make it harder for them to live here. And while we all applaud on this call, this Zoom, about how important people are, if you look at the way people have been treated in the city, the actions of the council do not reflect that the people are the priority. So the people are the priority. The people are what's important to the city. And as your next council member, I will make the people who live in the city the priority.
Thank you so much, Mr. Morrell. Moving on to our second set of questions. Each candidate will also have a chance to respond to these. You will have 1 minute and 30 seconds in your response. And the first question I'm going to pose to Mr. Cutno again. What specific things have you done in your district that demonstrate your ability to positively impact your district if elected to the council? Mr. Cutno, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds.
We're gonna go back to building the Walmart and the River Garden apartment, which provide affordable housing to people. The Walmart, which provide jobs to people. The Mahalia Jackson School, which provide early child care for the kids. And the reason why I'm talking about Mahalia Jackson School, because that school was the first community school that was designed for Central City. We had a nursing department. We had a laundry department. We had a Kaboom playground. And the reason why we had the healthcare department is so that mom, if that kid is sick, the mom still could take the kid to school and drop him in the healthcare department and still go to work. And the kid can receive proper medical attention during the course of the day. So these are the items, these are the things that are very important. And these are the things I have made a contribution to the city. I'm not just talking about what we can do. I am telling you about the things that exist way before I made a decision to run for the council at large position. The affordable housing, well, we all know we need better affordable housing. And one more thing, the Mahalia Jackson School, we created the Kaboom playground and we named it after the Nicole Cotton who was killed, the police officer who was killed by a mental illness person. So these are the things that I have been very passionate about many, many years. And these are the things that I have made a contribution to.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cutno. Moving on with the same question to Mr. Everson. What specific things have you done in your district that demonstrate your ability to positively impact the city as a council person?
Well, thank you, Jessica. The single thing I'm the most proud of is the Lafitte Greenway. And I hope everybody in this meeting knows that the Lafitte Greenway is a kind of like a linear park or a trail for people. They can walk on it, they can run, they can ride their bike, whatever. It's for non-motorized transit, if you will, that goes all the way, kind of cuts through the heart of New Orleans through multiple neighborhoods, and it runs almost 3 miles. Of course, I didn't build it myself. I have to say it was a community-driven process, but I had a key role to play in that, building coalitions, working together with other people, other groups across neighborhoods and so forth, with a concrete, achievable goal in mind. In fact, I led multiple hikes. Every year we would hike through the area where we wanted the trail to be built on this abandoned rail corridor. It didn't exist. If you've ever seen hundreds of people hiking on a trail that doesn't exist, it's really something to see. It's an act of imagination. And eventually, though, it did get built, and I'm very proud of that. And of course, there is a connection to, you've heard me talking about the climate crisis. There is a connection because we need to encourage people to use non-motorized transit, to walk and ride and so forth, to get around, to get outside, to enjoy the great outdoors. And of course, that's good for our health as well.
Thank you so much, Mr. Everson. Ms. Gilson Palmer, posing the same questions to you. What specific things have you done in your district that demonstrate your ability to positively impact the city as council at large?
Well, thank you so much, but I'm going to have to jump in on Mr. Cutno because I just love that he mentioned Kaboom. And in fact, I started a nonprofit and we did the first Kaboom project in the city, Confetti Kids. And I'm pleased to say that nonprofit's still active. We started to really bring equity because we didn't have decent playgrounds in our community. And so it's great to see that that's still alive. And I continue that, obviously, as director of Rebuilding Together, focusing on fixing up blighted housing and throughout the city and the district. But, I also believe when we talk specifically that it's important to keep the promises when you run for office. And I've done that this past term. Everything from reforming our ferry system to getting that bike levy lane back up there all the way and connecting Cutoff and to downtown and the rest of the city. When we talked about reducing blight, getting city-owned property back into commerce, tearing up and removing blight in a lot of the areas of Algiers. And, we still have a long way to go, but I have a demonstrated track record of getting it done. And most importantly, too, STRs. My opponent's going to sit here and say it's the worst thing ever written. And I know that the senator thinks an only good legislation is what he wrote. But this has been transformative legislation. It's unfortunate that that we have issues with the enforcement aspect of it from the administration side, but we have consistently, we had a meeting today where we're giving them more and more tools to ensure that that short-term rental issue is addressed in all different levels. And it is a multi-pronged approach. And I think what we have to look at is demonstrated progress. We all know that this city has been under a tremendous amount of stress from both before Katrina and after Katrina. But there's also very few people that have, we all have also said that it's a marathon, not a sprint. And many of us have worked hand in glove with neighborhoods across the city and community groups and nonprofits to make the city better. And I have a demonstrated track record of doing that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Palmer. Mr. JP Morrell, posing the same question to you. If you could tell us, what have you done in your district that demonstrates your ability to positively impact the city as council at large?
As a state senator and as a representative, I fought 2 mayors to rebuild Melanie Boy's home in the heart of Gentilly. This is a historic site where Louis Armstrong was one of the many kids that grew up there. And 2 mayors wanted to privatize it. I found the state money and we rebuilt it, and it's now the headquarters of NORD. I created the non-flood management district for all the properties that were formerly owned by the New Orleans Parish Levy Board. When Kathleen Blanco was mayor, she attempted to sell off all of the assets on the lakefront to private developers, removing it as a public asset. I fought her, I fought the governor and the mayor, and won, and those assets remain in public hands. I fought diligently throughout my entire tenure representing 3 parishes to rebuild the entire levee system after Katrina, so that when instances like Ida passed through New Orleans, we did not fail and the system held. There were efforts across the state to redirect funds and monies for those levee systems, and I fought them and I won. More importantly, I stood with residents at every opportunity when challenges came up. For example, as many of you know, in the lower 9th Ward, there was efforts twice under my tenure to expand the lock in the lower 9th Ward at the foot into the river that would have eliminated hundreds of homes. I stood with those communities against efforts by developers to destroy those communities, and I stood largely alone. Finally, I was one of the key leaders on passing the fair share legislation that finally got the city of New Orleans millions upon millions of dollars of money for infrastructure to rebuild our infrastructure, which is in tremendous disrepair. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mr. Morrell. Our next question is as follows. The Urban League supports, coaches, and trains small business owners and entrepreneurs. As a council person, how would you support small business owners in your district, like the ones we serve every day? And Mr. Cutno, I will start with you.
Could you repeat the question? You blanking out.
The Urban League supports, coaches, and trains small business owners and entrepreneurs. As a council person, how would you support small business owners in your district, like the ones we serve every day?
Okay. Well, my number one priority will be to increase the disadvantaged program for small businesses from 30% to 60%. I would like to take all small business, all government contracts and supplies and set it aside strictly for the small local businesses in the city of New Orleans, so that they would not have to compete with the largest corporation or the big business in the city of New Orleans for construction projects, vendors projects. So I really believe that we need to look at some type of system, and I would, as the council at large person with Ms. Palmer, since we both are building Kaboom playgrounds together, we can create the program to set aside all contracts for small businesses, local small businesses in the city of New Orleans that participate in the minority, or not the minority, the disadvantaged business programs.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cutno. Mr. Everson, posing the same question to you. How would you support small business owners in your district, which would be the whole city?
Right, thank you. First of all, thank you to the Urban League for doing that, because it's definitely much needed. And the city also needs to foster innovation and entrepreneurship. But I think we need to do it in a kind of different economic model than what we currently have. The what I mean is that we need different metrics of success. Usually we focused on growth, always talking about growth, and that's the only measure of success. Instead, we need to focus on social and environmental well-being as the real markers of economic success as we work to transform our economy. The kind of profit-driven business model is what has created the multiple crises that we now face, including the climate crisis that you've heard me talking about. So I believe we need to foster the creation of worker-led cooperatives that operate on a different model. They've done a lot of this work in Jackson, Mississippi. So we should look to what they're doing. They call it Cooperation Jackson. And within that framework, we need to create jobs that will create the future that we need, a greener future, a future that is less carbon intensive. And we call that the kind of the Green New Deal, right? We need a Green New Deal for New Orleans at the municipal level. We might call it the Green New Orleans Deal. It should be a little different than what we hear about at the national level, tailored to our specific, unique community.
Thank you so much, Mr. Everson. Councilmember Gilson Palmer posing the same question to you. How would you support small business owners in your district across the city, like the ones we serve at the Urban League every day?
Well, first, you really want everybody to become small business owners, the ones that want to and have that opportunity, which means they also need to start somewhere and have a job. And, I authored Ban the Box, which really allowed people and gave them access to jobs. And I think that's a very important thing when we look at that, to expand those types of programs. I totally agree with Mr. Cutno when we talk about the Office of Supplier Diversity. I see it very clearly working on housing, both in the affordable housing business and also working with contractors who are DBEs. When you hire a prime that's a DBE, all their subs are DBEs. And there is a multiplier benefit to that. And so we really, as a city, do need to continue focusing on the enforcement of the supplier diversity program and try to encourage more primes that are DBEs and not just subcontractors. And I think that's really another way of gaining wealth and equity, and especially within home ownership. Most people in this country start a business, right, by mortgaging their home. And we lost 10 percentage points of Black home ownership after Katrina. And we're at risk of losing them again after COVID, which is why I've been a huge advocate of creating programs and creating revenue streams that go into our NIF funds that allows people to have second, when we talk of soft seconds, to create home buyer opportunities. And as a city, we really need to focus on affordability and on producing more units in this town so we can create those opportunities for people. And that's really what builds wealth and equity in our city. In addition to that,
much, Councilmember Palmer.
Thank you
So much, Councilmember Palmer. Moving on to Mr. Morrell, same question. How would you support small business owners in your district, like the ones we serve every day?
Well, I'd like to begin by saying I really appreciate Urban League stepping into a space that is lacking on the city level, which is supporting growing new businesses. You are in a vacuum and providing a service that's allowing them to grow. For the most part, people on this call have talked about DBEs. The DBE program at the city level is completely busted. It's broken. And part of that's because we are a lowest bid city. When they do projects, they do lowest bid projects, especially with construction where DBE companies come from and grow. And when you do lowest bid, that completely almost always disintegrates any participation of women or minority owned businesses. More importantly, there are a slew of economic development programs available at the city of New Orleans that are available for out-of-state large companies, but not available for small in-city companies. For example, there's two breweries, Cajun Fire Brewery in New Orleans East, as well as Royal Brewery in New Orleans East, one owned by women, one owned by an African-American group. Both of those companies are going broke, developing and trying to build breweries. When the Bensons decided to put Dixie out in New Orleans East, the state and city rolled out every incentive they could find for them. If you just had equity in how we provide incentives the city has to those small businesses and gave them that same ability to access those resources, they would see growth and, most importantly, make government work. Recently opened a campus headquarters this last weekend and it had no water. It took me 8 days to get water to a formal commercial building. If I were trying to open a bakery or a store and I had a mortgage and I had employees and I could not get water turned on for 8 days, that could make or break my business. The city fails at basic stuff. If the city succeeded in providing basic services, businesses would thrive here.
Thanks so much, Mr. Morrell. Appreciate your response. Moving on to the next question, and for this, each candidate will have 1 minute to respond. That question is this: the Urban League and the Power Coalition advocate for racial equity every day. By racial equity, we mean just and fair inclusion into a society in which all people, regardless of their race or ethnicity, can participate, prosper, and reach their full potential. How would you, as a council person, fight for fairness and equity? And Mr. Morrell, we will start with you.
That's a great question. I would continue what I've been doing for my 13 years in the legislature, which is making sure that whenever we're having conversations about any aspect of government, that we continue to have a Black African-American perspective of what our families are going through. Because when you talk to people, especially at the business level and at the larger government level, they often talk about how much opportunity is in the city. But when you're talking to your cousins, your friends, your relatives, your neighbors, and you see how opportunity is lacking, you have to constantly challenge perspective and privilege and say, no, what you think is here, what you think is fair does not exist. We as a city, we do not strive for equity every day. In many instances, it's sort of like when Obama became president. Everyone thought we were in post-racism. We have an African-American woman who's the mayor, and some people go, well, that solves all the problems. It doesn't. As a city, we sleep on the fact that many people who live here and grew up here do not have the opportunity to stay here. And many people, older people, are telling their kids at some point, there's nothing for you here. Maybe you shouldn't come back when you go to college. We have to challenge that notion. We have to change what opportunities are here, and always taking things and reminding people of the African-American Black perspective of what families are going through in this city is essential to make sure that there's equity and fairness.
Thank you so much, Mr. Morrell. As a reminder, if everyone could keep their responses to 1 minute, it will ensure that everyone gets a chance to speak. Councilmember Palmer, posing the same question to you. How would you, as council member at large, fight for fairness and equity?
So I think a lot of this also needs to be based, right, in data and how we address it. Often we have these emotive responses. We know that one neighborhood looks different than another neighborhood. One neighborhood has access to resources, the other neighborhood doesn't. I see it every day in my district from representing Algiers and the Fall Reaches, where we have less opportunity to transportation, which is something that I've been a huge advocate of and fixing. And we see it also in New Orleans East. But then so when I talk about data, I sit on the Youth Master Planning Commission. And what we did is there's a master plan that just came out. And why is that important? Because it clearly states and shows where the demographics are, where the kids reside, and where the programmings are, and where all the resources are. And we have to create ways of showing that by matching the resources to where the kids live, right? Instead of having the kids go all the way to those resources. So again, when we base things in data, it makes a lot of sense. And we also can talk about another thing that we've been working on is, and that'll be coming up this council, is a heat island study. When we talk about green infrastructure, we talk about investment should follow where the need is. So we're going to have these pathways to show where we should invest. Same when we talk about within our grid. If we want to be a more reliable city, we need to start focusing first on areas of the city that don't have the ability to evacuate, that won't have an ability to have solar panels and house backup. And those are how we should drive our decision-making process, is mapping out where the need is and matching it with the resources.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Palmer. Mr. Everson, posing the same question to you. How would you, as a council person, fight for fairness and equity?
Well, first of all, I'm cognizant of my own privileges, which are many. Those privileges kind of function like blinders. And so if I just rely on my own experience, I know that I'm missing a lot. I've been working for 22 years now at Xavier University, a historically Black college, and it's been something of an education for me. And at this point, I realize how much more I still have to learn. Also in my lifetime, I've seen that we've made undeniably progress on racial equity issues, but it's so slow. I think we are still such a long way from a truly equitable society. I said I got in this race to talk about the climate crisis. And of course, there's a connection here. It is a racial justice issue. brown and black communities bear the brunt of the climate crisis. And, more than that, these systems of exploitation of nature and the maintenance of white supremacy, they're the same systems. So getting down to brass tacks very quickly, the systemic problems, there's so many related to criminal justice. I believe the council needs to work with the new DA to expand reforms. We need to ensure ban the box is actually enforced. We need to expand legalization of drugs.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. And I'm going to now go to Mr. Cutno and allow him to answer the same question. Mr. Cutno, how would you as a council person fight for fairness and equity? You have 1 minute.
If you look at my Facebook page, it starts off with equality and opportunity should not discriminate. The ball should bounce the same for everybody. Just like I mentioned earlier, take the DBE program. Let's, instead of 30%, let's give it 60%. The black population in this city is 60%. Why we have to get 30%? Why we can't get the majority of the on the same level as the black population? We have the data. The data is showing that 40% of African American single moms are living in poverty. Why? Why we cannot address those issues with the budget that we allocate every day, that we work with every day? 50% African American males are unemployed. Why? Why we cannot provide jobs for them? Why we cannot provide housing that is affordable to the people? Because of gentrification, it costs an average of $200,000, $300,000 for a home in this city. You need $60,000 to live in this city, but the jobs is not coming to the community. Equality and opportunity is discriminating against African Americans in this city, and we need to address those issues on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you, Mr. Cutno. Moving on to our next question, each candidate will have 1 minute to respond. Workers' rights and fair wages are priorities of the Power Coalition and the Urban League. Do you support a living wage and other policies that center people and workers' rights? And Mr. Cutno, I will start with you.
Why, yes. The council is living on the fact that they have passed a $15 an hour wage increase. Well, look at it takes $60,000 a year to live in this city. The people need at least $20 an hour. The firefighters, the professional firefighters, the city workers, they need $20 an hour just to live in this city. Yes, I would promote, support, and do whatever I can to increase the wages in the city so that everybody can have an opportunity. Because the biggest problem we're having with the black community is economical discrimination. Racism is no longer an issue for us. It's the economics. We are denied the opportunity, the jobs, the housing, and everything in this city, and we are the majority. Yes, I support increased wages for the people.
Thank you, Mr. Cutno. Mr. Everson, posing the same question to you. Do you support a living wage and other policies that center people and workers' rights?
Yes, certainly. And it should be noted, $15 is probably only living for a single person. If you have just one child in the equation, that more than doubles the amount that you need. And that's just for living, right? That's not enough for actually saving. A saving wage is probably what we need to be aiming for. The truth is that we just radically underpay people. And that's one reason that I mentioned earlier. We need to support and foster the creation of worker-led cooperatives, because the profit motive is what is behind the idea of paying people less than their labor is actually worth.
Thank you, Mr. Everson. Councilmember Gilson Palmer, do you support a living wage and other policies that center people and workers' rights?
Yes, and I voted for it, and I've advocated for it on this council, and I will continue to do so. We also know that I authored the Ban the Box, and it's a very good, not only is it good legislation, but we also have some really good accountability built into it. And we've really made sure that it goes and is expanded to all subcontractors. And I think we've seen, especially with this whole trash debacle, what happens when you don't have a contract, because obviously this administration inherited those sanitation contracts, right, prior to all of us coming into office, but it clearly did not outline what they had to pay their employees nor their subcontracts. So I'm committed to ensuring as we continue that we have to make sure that all contractors and subcontractors have to abide by a livable wage that also has built into it an extended cost of living. Because again, we shouldn't have to keep going back, because we know $15 an hour is going to be obsolete in a matter of years. In addition to that, we also have to talk about basic what workers' rights are, and do they have the ability to change that. And so from within, we want to create an Office of Diversity and Inclusion, where people, and we have to look from within at City Hall, where people can go and make complaints and have a voice, and that we can follow up on that. And I think it's very important to have a
Thank you,
stand.
Councilmember Palmer. I'm going to have to stop you right there so we can get to Mr. Morrell and our closing remarks. Mr. Morrell, posing the same question to you. Do you support a living wage and other policies that center people and workers' rights?
Yes, and the living wage ordinance that passed is actually a misnomer. It's a dead wage. We are the only city in the entire state of Louisiana that does not include a cost of living increase for people that work in the city of New Orleans. So that $15 is frozen at $15 because there was no cost of living increase included in it. But to add insult to injury, the New Orleans City Council, they have a cost of living increase on their salaries. So when they started off at $83,000 8 years ago, they now get paid $97,000. So 12% pay increase that city workers will never enjoy, because the current living wage, which is a dead wage, does not include cost of living increases. More importantly, talking about sanitation, the Hoppers went on strike in May of 2020. That's 18 months ago. What happened with our trash was foreseeable, because in this progressive blue city, the city council and the mayor would not stand with unionized workers to fight for their rights. We are the bluest city in the state, and we are the least union-friendly city in the state, because we know what is necessary and we do not do it. As your next council person at large, I will stand with the working families and make sure that their voices are heard and not just given lip service.
Thank you, Council Member, or thank you, Mr. Morrell, former State Senator, Mr. Morrell. Moving on to one more question, I'm being told that we will have some time to ask this question about Energy New Orleans. And I'll pose this question first to Mr. Morrell. New Orleans City Council is unique in that it is the regulatory body for Energy New Orleans, but there are community concerns about raising energy costs, particularly after Hurricane Ida. How will you ensure that communities do not bear the brunt of corporate costs? Mr. Morrell, you have about a minute.
The number one job of the city of New Orleans, the city council, when it comes to energy, is being a fiduciary agent for ratepayers. Too many costs are passed through to ratepayers. The advertising for energy, the power to the people are paying for it. The city council needs to do a better job as a fiduciary agent, challenging when energy tries to do pass-through costs. More importantly, when we find energy for things like astroturfing, a plant in New Orleans East that didn't come online properly for the hurricane, we shouldn't be taking the funds from that as a regulatory agent and putting up crime cameras. If you would have taken the $5 million from the energy fine, you could have literally provided a third of the current solar panel homes in the city with batteries. We need to take our job as a city council, being a regulatory authority over energy, more seriously, and not be in cahoots with energy like there's some kind of piggy bank we shake to push our own agendas. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mr. Morrell. Councilmember Kristen Palmer, posing the same question to you. How will you ensure that communities do not bear the brunt of corporate costs, specifically speaking about Energy New Orleans?
Sure, thank you. And I actually have a track record of doing that. When I first came onto the council, there was no Energy Smart program in Algiers. And again, we have to always pay attention to what we're talking about, what the ratepayers are. Currently do not sit on utilities, do not dismiss that. But I also want to really recognize that every time I've run, I've not taken any money from Entergy or their lobbyists. My opponent, Mr. Morrell, he's sitting here talking about being in cahoots, which I'm quite not sure understand what he's saying, considering he's taken over $20,000 over his long career from Entergy. And I don't know why he's running for this seat. If he's so upset about the leadership of the Utilities Committee, why isn't he running against Helena Moreno, who's chair? Before that, it was Jason Williams, who was his friend. And before that, it was his mom. So again, that's 16 years of friends and family of Senator JP Morrell. And then he's saying that some of us are in cahoots. And I don't even sit on the Utility Committee, nor do I take money from Entergy or any oil and gas company either. So again, let's just call it the way we see it and move forward and try to solve answers instead of proselytizing about what you're gonna do what have you done?
Thank you so much, Councilmember Palmer.
but-
I'm going to have to stop you right there.
Thank
Ms. Everson, we are moving to you with the very same question. How will you ensure that communities do not bear the brunt of corporate costs?
Thanks. This is really one of the most important questions of the day, and I'm glad to see it's getting more attention now. Of course, the short answer is the council has this authority. They have the authority over rates. You know, Entergy can't just raise rates. They have to go before the council and make that request. The long answer is that it is complicated because for too long, we've had what is referred to as regulatory capture, which is, you know, where the Entergy has, it's a huge company. It's got a lot of resources to bear, and it kind of has its way with the council, unfortunately. And, you know, they're really, you talked about communities bearing corporate costs. That is the business model that Entergy and most for-profit utility energy companies use. So we need to change the model. Municipalization, anti-monopoly, breaking up the monopoly, looking even at the idea of a new regulatory board. These are all things that need to be on the table right now.
Thank you so much, Mr. Everson. Mr. Cutno, same question to you. How will you ensure that communities do not bear the brunt of corporate costs?
I'm going to have to agree with Ms. Palmer. Let's just be real about this. This council has the authority to regulate Entergy. We are only city agency with that type of authority. Helena Marina failed this community and failed the people because she's in bed with the Entergy people, and we cannot allow that to go on. We can stop the Entergy from raising our rates. We don't have to approve those applications. We can take a stand against it. In the month of July, we give them $75 million, with $40 million from the city. They put up 35. Why are we giving a major corporation with a $22 billion budget money from the city, from our own budget? We are failing the people. The council, her Marino, the chairperson of the utility committee, has failed the people. They keep promising everything. Yes, they fined them $6 million. Why they didn't give it back to the people? Where is the money? We don't know.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cutno. I'm going to stop you right there, but I'll also turn to you for our final question of the evening, which is just allowing you to give our viewers your closing remarks about why they should choose you for their next council person at large. Mr. Cutno, you have 30 seconds.
Okay, we need leadership, new leadership, someone who's going to take the stand against Entergy, someone who's going to reduce your utility rates, your sewage and water board rate, someone who's going to fight the crime. Elect me, and I will be your crime fighter in our neighborhood. I will bring down the sewage and water board payment. As I stated earlier, we have the resources, we have the tools to rebuild this city and to move this city forward. We just need new leadership to help.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cutno. Appreciate your time tonight. Mr. Everson, 30 seconds to leave your final impressions.
Hurricane Ida had to be a wake-up call for all of us. I would ask everyone on this call, ask yourself right now, is the climate crisis front and center for you? And if not, what would it take? We need all hands on deck, demanding change, but particularly our authorities. The next council will face the reality of the climate crisis. We need a council that will face the challenges squarely and courageously. That's my message to my fellow candidates. And that's also my message to the audience. Hold me accountable. Hold any of whoever wins accountable for climate action.
Thank you so much, Mr. Everson. Appreciate you for joining us tonight. Councilmember Gilson Palmer, your last words to our audience.
Thank you so much. So when we really talk about city council, we're really talking about quality of life issues that face all of us. And I'm the only one that really has a demonstrated history of working with neighborhoods and communities to make substantial change and under very difficult circumstances, both before Katrina and after Katrina, from fixing up vacant and blighted housing to focusing on blighted housing where our elders live and people with disabilities. I've done thousands across the city. When we talk about transportation inequity, I've helped close that gap. When we talk about creating economic development, I'm glad Senator Morrell brought up the breweries. All that legislation happened under the council on which I sat on. And when we
Thank you
talk
so
about
much,
community
Councilmember
engagement-
Palmer. I really appreciate you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Jessica.
Mr. Morrell, giving you the opportunity to leave your last impression on voters.
Yeah, we're on the Urban League, so I'll keep it 100 and answer what Ms. Palmer put down. As a council candidate, I've received no money from any energy, oil and gas, or trash company. We'll never know how much money Ms. Palmer would have taken because before she got on the council, Sheldon Medora passed a resolution saying council members couldn't take money from energy companies. But Ms. Palmer did enjoy a substantial donation from Richard's Disposal in April of this year. So while you were out there, fighting over your trash, she was enjoying donations from them. Mind you, she targets Metro Disposal, Richard's opponent, but never brings them up, but they did pay her. So maybe that's why.
Thank you so much, Mr. Morrell. And I want to thank each of the at-large candidates for joining us tonight. I know our voting public appreciated the opportunity to hear from you. Now we're going to hear from our District B candidates. Tonight we have with us Mr. J.H. Banks, Councilmember J.H. Banks, Ms. Leslie Harris, Rosalind Roz Reed Thibodeau, and Rella Zapital. We're going to follow the same agenda and questions that we had previously. And I'm going to ask our District B candidates to turn their cameras on if you have not already. Our at-large candidates are, of course, welcome to stay with us throughout the rest of the night. But we will also be willing to let you go if you need to head home and get dinner started. And we're moving to our opening statements portion of the night. And we will start with Mr. J. Banks. If he is on the call, you have 1 minute to introduce yourself to voters.
Jessica, thank you. And thank you to the Urban League for the opportunity. I am the councilman of District B. I'm in my first term and I'm running for re-election. I have been holistically focused on quality of life issues. They call District B the land of the provisos because our functions include zoning, land use matters. And we have been very intentional in making sure that every development that goes into our neighborhoods meets the criteria of the neighborhood and not the other way around. I know that my record is going to be attacked because some folks don't have one. So the only way that they can make points is to say negative things about me, but I'm very proud of my record and it's clear for everyone to see. I'm asking for everyone who is in District B for their help and support. And I look forward to serving you again in the same way that I have. And again, my record is clear. I don't have double talk. I don't have side speak. I will bring to you the truth. I will always be open and accessible. And I am standing on the record that I have made, not just on the city council, but in my entire adult life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Banks. Moving to our next candidate who has joined us tonight. That candidate is Ms. Leslie Harris. If you could introduce yourself to our viewers. You
Sure,
have 1 minute.
Thank you, Jessica. And thank you, Urban League and the Power Coalition. It's an honor to be with you this evening, especially in light of your advocacy for small businesses and entrepreneurs. That's a subject that's near and dear to my heart, and I can't wait to talk with you about it. My name is Leslie Harris. I'm running for City Council District B. Someone recently asked me what I'm passionate about and why I'm running for this position. And I can tell you it's simply this. I am passionate about keeping New Orleanians in this city. I'm passionate about attracting business to the city. I'm passionate about economic development, but we can't do that without getting our basics covered. And those basics are a solid and reliable infrastructure, a focus on violent crime, including more workforce training for our kids, and wraparound services for people re-entering after incarceration. We also need to look at economic development and job creation, not just for some, but for everyone. I have the legal background, almost 20 years as an attorney for corporations and culture bearers to get things done, and the policy-making experience at Loyola. So I
Thank you
ask
so much,
your
Ms.
vote.
Harris. We appreciate you for introducing yourself to our viewers.
Thank
We
you.
will move on now to Ms. Roz Reed Thibodeau. If she is on the call, you have 1 minute to tell us a little bit about you. Do we have Rosalind? Okay, we will move on to Ms. Rella Zapital. You have 1 minute to tell us a little bit about you and why you're running.
Thank you so much to the Urban League and the Power Coalition. I'm Rella and I'm running for City Council because we need change and we need it now. I'm the most qualified candidate in this race because of my legal background and my experience as a neighborhood leader. District B, like New Orleans, is full of potential, but we will never reach it without a council member who is in tune with the needs of real families, thinks ahead, and is willing to be bold to get results for families. As Neighborhood Association President, I have done just that. I have a proven track record of identifying problems, coming up with solutions, and ensuring those solutions are implemented. I had the foresight to release a plan to reduce power outages before Ida hit. That's the kind of foresight we need. Machine politicians have taken over, failed to deliver on our needs, and are in the bag of corporate political interest. I am the only candidate not tied to the old school political machine. It's time for real change and real results. And I'm the only candidate who can deliver real solutions for our families.
Thank you so much, Rella, for that statement. We're going to move to our questions now. Each candidate will have a chance to respond to each question, and you will have 30 seconds to respond. We're going to start with Mr. Banks. What do you think are the most important functions of a council person? Mr. Banks, you have the floor.
Those functions are dictated by the city charter. We are responsible for writing laws, we're responsible for land use, and we're responsible for approving the city budget. But we also have fiduciary responsibility to our citizens as being the gateway into other city services, and we serve as a conduit to try to get quality of life issues addressed.
Thank you so much, Mr. Banks. Ms. Harris, posing the same question to you. What are the most important functions of a council person?
Sure, absolutely. Budgetary control is key. While I was at Loyola as chief of staff, we had to turn around the university by digging into the budget, really looking at it. And that's what I plan to do as city council person. I also plan to be responsive to everyone, to listen to constituent needs. And I think those are the two primary responsibilities of a city council person: budgetary control and responsiveness to constituents. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ms. Harris. Ms. Zaplatal, posing the same question to you. What are the most important functions of a council person?
I think for this council, the most important functions are regulating energy and the budgetary process. It's unfortunate that our current council member doesn't think that regulating energy is important, considering how terrible we've experienced with past Ida with all the transmission lines going down. But I think regulating energy and having a hand on the budgeting process and ensuring that the administration is doing everything it can for our citizens as it relates to the budget is extremely important.
Thank you so much for that. Our second question, in which candidates will also have 30 seconds to respond, is as follows. How do you plan to engage with the residents of your district if you are elected? And we'll mix it up a bit. We will start with Ms. Zaplatal for this question.
I will be a truly accessible council person. All my clients have my cell phone number. I envision the same thing for my constituents, and I will vow to respond to any email, text, or phone call within 24 hours. I, like so many other constituents, have emailed our current council member on countless occasions and don't even get a response. That will not be how I handle the office. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. Harris, posing the same question to you. How do you plan to engage with the residents of your district if you are elected?
Again, as chief of staff of Loyola University, I had an open door policy. So anybody could come to me and talk about anything, and I would find a solution or ask them to wait patiently while I found a solution, but I would always be responsive, and I plan to be responsive as your next city council person. I also plan to hold a series of quarterly town halls where people are, because not everybody is a member of a neighborhood association. So we need to look at churches, and we need to hold these town halls at a time when most people can attend, which is typically the evening. So I commit to that right now.
Thank you so much, Ms. Harris. Mr. Banks, last but not least, posing the same question to you. How do you plan to engage with the residents of your district if you are elected?
The same way that I've been doing. I attend 2 or 3 churches every Sunday. We miss no neighborhood meetings. I have either myself or a staff member at every neighborhood meeting. And for those residents that are a part of neighborhood organizations, I walk my neighborhoods. I talk to people. I go out and engage them, and will continue to do that. Now, I don't know where the blatant lie is coming from that we don't respond to emails. We're the most responsive office in city government, and I can show you the records that will prove that.
Thank you so much. Moving on to our next question. What do you see as the greatest assets of this district, District B? And I will pose that question to Ms. Harris first, giving you an opportunity to respond.
Sure. I think the number one priority and asset of the city are its people. I got into this race because I care about my neighbors who are all around me, who've had their water cut off without notice under this current administration, who are still waiting on trash pickup. People want the basics covered: streets that work, utilities that are reliable, and economic opportunity. And I plan to provide that for them.
Thank you so much. And moving on, the same question now to Mr. Banks. What do you see as the greatest assets of District B?
Obviously, the greatest asset of District B is its people. We have the most diverse district anywhere in this, anywhere. We've got very wealthy, we've got not so wealthy, we've got Black, we've got white, we've got every demographic that exists. And the people are the most important. That's why my office is focused on making sure that people get what they need in order to make their lives successful. Affordable housing, early childhood education, pushing for increased wages are things that will make our citizens whole. And if we make our citizens whole, our whole city will be much better.
Thank you so much, Mr. Banks. Ms. Zaplatal, same question to you. What are the greatest assets of District B?
The people. You know, we are truly the most diverse district in all of New Orleans, like Councilmember Banks stated, with such an amazing mix of neighborhoods and businesses. District B has so much to offer, and I couldn't imagine living in any other district. I've spent almost every single day of this campaign canvassing, except when it's raining, of course. And everyone has been so genuine and so kind, and it really does make me so proud to be a resident of New Orleans, but more importantly, a resident of District B.
Thank you so much for that. Our next question is also for every candidate. You will have 30 seconds to respond. What are your top 3 priorities for your district if you are elected to serve? And we will start with Councilmember Banks.
To close the loophole revolving in criminal district court that will help keep our citizens safe, to advocate for early childhood education, because we never arrest our way out of crime. We've got to stop creating criminals, and to provide affordable housing for our citizens. Those 3 things, if we prop those 3 things up, if we make those 3 things better, life will be better for all of us. And just as I have done, I'm going to continue to press the bar on all of them because they are critical to our future.
Thank you so much, Mr. Banks. Ms. Harris, posing the same question to you. What are your top 3 priorities for District B?
It's not very exciting, but infrastructure is the number 1 priority because it impacts so much. It impacts the businesses coming in New Orleans. It impacts the people who are working in New Orleans. So we have to fix our infrastructure, including our roads, water, and utilities. Public safety is another priority for me. We have to solve the violent crime issue. There's money that is in the federal government that we have not asked for, that we need to ask for to solve violent crime. And finally, economic development. Getting and making sure that people have good jobs here so that we can attract and continue our economic development for our citizens.
Thank you so much, Ms. Harris. Ms. Zaplatal, what are your top 3 priorities for District B?
Ensuring that Entergy invests in hardening and making our energy transmission lines more reliable and extreme weather resilient. Investing in our youth, they are our future. I'm a mom of 2 young children, and I know how important it is that we invest in our kids. And finally, ensuring that the American Rescue Plan dollars and the infrastructure bill funds are used to truly transform the city of New Orleans. We have one of the only chances, in a very long time to really invest in our infrastructure, and we must do that.
Thank you so much, Ms. Zaplatal. Moving on to our next set of questions, each candidate will have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond to each of these questions. And the first question I'm going to pose to Ms. Harris. What specific things have you done in your district that demonstrate your ability to positively impact your district if elected to the City Council? Ms. Harris, or
Sure, thank you, Jessica. I have three. The first is that I have represented small businesses and culture bearers my entire legal career, which is now at 20 plus years of being a lawyer here in New Orleans. I prided myself on helping small businesses grow and expand in New Orleans, and I prided myself on helping our culture bearers, who are the basis of our economic sustainability here in New Orleans, to make sure that they are protected. So that's number one, and that goes throughout not only District B, but the city. My term at Loyola, I think, is important. We bolstered and made sure that we righted the financial ship of Loyola. As chief of staff, I was integral to that effort. I took over the efforts to make sure that we tracked and monitored initiatives and put them in place. Running Loyola was like running a small city, and that's the experience that I'm bringing to this position. The final thing is also near and dear to my heart, and that's being a member of the board of directors of Yaya, which is right here on LaSalle in Louisiana. It's been an amazing organization that teaches art and entrepreneurship to our kids. And it is just such a wonderful organization that I've supported for years and that I will continue to support. So thank you.
Thanks so much. Ms. Zaplatal, I will pose the same question to you. What specific things have you done in your district that demonstrate your ability to positively impact your district as a council person?
Yeah, so as neighborhood association president, I have been on the ground doing things in our neighborhood that I feel and I know have positively impacted our residents. I spearheaded and worked with the Preservation Resource Center to create the Turtle Cultural District, which ensures blighted properties are brought back into commerce, not only improving our neighborhood, but also bringing much needed tax revenue to the city. I also petitioned for and ensured that pedestrian crosswalk signs were installed in our neighborhood along Magazine Street. This has provided safety for our kids going to school in the morning and coming home in the afternoon, and also provided safety to residents who are dining and shopping along Magazine Street. I was also proud to stand with other neighborhood associations fighting against big box national chains taking over Magazine Street. I've also fought to prevent historic homes from being demolished. So I've been boots on the ground doing real work for the residents of District B, which I'm very, very proud of.
Thanks so much, Ms. Zaplatal. Councilmember Banks, posing the same question to you. What specific things have you done that demonstrate your ability to positively impact District B?
From the beginning of the COVID pandemic, I spearheaded food distributions throughout District B, vaccine drives, mass distributions, and more recently after the hurricane, distributed ice and water and food and needed supplies to our residents. And I realize that that is not a legislatively mandated function of the city council, but it shows commitment. You see, commitment is not something that's theoretical or philosophical. It's demonstrated. And the fact that I've been out here on the ground proves my commitment about this district. Now, in terms of my council responsibilities, I have been at the forefront of passing legislation that is going to increase affordable housing. Many members of the school board now hate me because I've taken money from them that they wanted to put into the prison, the school at the youth center, and took that money and put it into early childhood education. The truth is we've got to get our kids educated so we can keep them out of jail. The fact is that I've been very, very, very focused on making sure that quality of life in our districts is sustained. I encourage economic development. I want businesses in our neighborhood, but those businesses can't come into our neighborhood at the expense of the citizens that live there. They tease me about District B being the land of the provisos because we require every single zoning thing that we have to deal with to be conformed to the needs of the neighborhood. And those that won't conform, they aren't granted their permits. Those that will, it's that mesh, it's that marriage, it's that sweet spot that brings the economic development in and enhances the quality of life, and the neighbors all benefit from having those businesses, but not at their detriment.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Banks. Posing this next question first to Ms. Zaplatal. The Urban League supports, coaches, and trains small business owners and entrepreneurs. As a council person, how would you support small business owners in your district, like the ones we serve every day?
Thank you for that question. Having talked with so many neighbors, the common theme that I'm hearing is a lack of consistency in the process. I was speaking with Kioka Hampton, who has a small Italian ice push cart, and she so appropriately said, I don't know why they call it one stop. It really should be called more like 100 stops, which I think is so accurate, right? You go in to open a business and they send you to 50 different places. And when you get to one place, they're like, no, you need to go to this place, or I don't know what you're talking about. That is a problem. How can we promote and support small businesses when we make it almost impossible to actually operate in this city? So I would work with the administration to actually create a one-stop shop that really works for small businesses and helps promote them so that we can get more tax revenue into the city, because that's what we need. But I think another important aspect of that, supporting small businesses, is through the zoning process. I will ensure that I am involved from the very beginning, and that means the NPP process. Currently, the council member isn't as involved as he should be. I've spoken to so many small businesses who said that from the get-go, they thought the council member was supporting them. And then when they come to the end and they need to have their zoning process passed, guess what? He changes and he flips, and that's a problem. I will be honest and open and work with both opponents and proponents to hopefully come to a solution. But if we can't, I will be honest and I will let the business or the neighborhood know I'm going to support you or I'm not, so they can rely on that.
Thank you so much, Ms. Zapletal. Mr. Banks, I'm going to pose this question to you so that you can respond. As a council person, how would you support small business owners in your district?
We have hand carried every single zoning matter that has come through us to get businesses into neighborhoods from the beginning. Now, why Rella keeps, I don't know what's wrong with Rella tonight, but say la vie, there is no one that's going to say that I flipped on anything. The truth of the matter is that we go through the process, we work the process with the neighbors and the businesses, and we come to that sweet spot where the businesses conform to the needs of the neighborhood. We will continue to do that. Now, having a supportive council office that will get you through all of the myriad of places that you need to go is something that we will continue to do. I don't think you're going to find very many businesses in all of those zoning dockets that I've handled that are going to echo what Rella just said. That's just blatantly not true. The truth of the matter is, yes, we do our part to get people through the system, and we'll continue to do that.
Thanks so much, Councilmember Banks. And last but not least, Ms. Harris, how would you support small business owners in District B?
I think that zoning decisions are critical. We have a testimonial by Reginald Commodore, who attempted to open an ice cream shop 1 block off Magazine Street near Chapalaya next to a service station on Louisiana Avenue. You guys can drive by it. It's prime commercial property, and he wanted to open this ice cream stand for his autistic son. He had 300 signatures of neighbors who supported him, went through the city council process, and finally at the end of the process, after he bought equipment, after he did planning, after he put all this work and sweat into it, Jay Banks' office shut him down. You can see it, you can hear it from his own ears on my website, harrisfornola.com, and I would commend that to you to see what really happens in the current councilman's office. He's not the only story out there. We've heard this story over and over and over again from small businesses, and it can't continue to happen. We need to have transparency into the process. We need to have communication, and we can't just bend to the needs of political operatives and because I'm trying to get votes. So that just can't happen. We need to make sure that we're supporting our small businesses through logical decisions, and that's not happening right now. It's part of the reason why I'm running.
Thank you so much, Ms. Harris. Our next question is as follows. The Urban League and the Power Coalition advocate for racial equity every day. By racial equity, we mean just and fair inclusion into a society in which all people, regardless of their race or ethnicity, can participate, prosper, and reach their full potential. How would you, as a council person, fight for fairness and equity? And Mr. Banks, I will start with you.
I've got a history and a track record of doing just that. The truth is that this district is very diverse. The council member has to be someone that can relate to everyone here. Now, I may not be a part of every demographic, but the truth is my ears will hear all the demographics. We will continue to do just that we have done in the past to make sure that every voice is heard. I've got a history of doing that, and we'll continue to do that.
Thank you. Ms. Harris, posing the same question to you. How would you fight for fairness and equity if elected to the council?
Look, I've had to fight for fairness and equity my whole entire life. And in my legal career, I've taken those lessons learned to fight for equality. Specifically, I represented the Forum for Equality to strike down Louisiana's discriminatory anti-gay marriage laws. We took that case from the inception in federal court, represented our clients in the Forum for Equality and same-sex couples. And ultimately, while the decision was pending in the Fifth Circuit, the Supreme Court ruled and overturned those discriminatory laws. We have to continue to fight and advocate for diversity in the profession, in economic development, and support small businesses, minority and women-owned businesses. It's something that I've done throughout my career, including working with the incubators to make sure that small businesses have the legal advice that they need to get on their feet and move forward. The other thing I want to point to is my tenure on the Industrial Development Board. Jessica, you've seen me sit there. And so we have requirements that require at least a 30% DBE participation in any project that's getting a tax credit. And we make sure and call back the developers to enforce that 30% rate or question them very hard about why it's not enforced. That experience shows you that I'm not scared to call people in, not scared to ask the hard questions. And it's experience that I will bring to this position. Thank you, Jessica.
Thanks so much, Ms. Harris. Ms. Zaplatal, same question. How would you fight for fairness and equity?
I'm going to first address Mr. Banks saying he doesn't know what's wrong with me this evening. He doesn't like to hear facts. And as Ms. Harris pointed out, the ice cream shop on Louisiana is one example. The New Orleans Boxing Club is another. So this is a repeated process and procedure that Councilmember Banks has done over the course of his time. Now, fairness and equity. I've spent my legal career advocating for fairness and equity for my clients, who in most cases are being treated a certain way because of the color of their skin or their lack of financial means. I will continue that same advocacy once on council, but for my constituents. I believe that fighting for fairness and equity starts with council members leading by example. At the Step Up Forum, I was reminded that although the city has banned the box ordinance, there are only 3 city departments that actually hire formerly incarcerated individuals, which is a problem. I vow to not only support fairness and equity, but to demonstrate it by hiring a staff that is truly reflective of our city, which includes those that are formerly incarcerated. I think it's also important to mention that fairness and equity requires a council to treat all constituents the same and not have a pay-to-play system that our current council member has. He is only perpetuating the disparity between the haves and the have-nots, which needs to stop.
Thanks so much, Ms. Zaplatal. And I'm going to turn again to you for the second question to respond first to. And that is, workers' rights and fair wages are priorities of the Power Coalition and the Urban League. Do you support a living wage, such as a $15 minimum wage, and other policies that center people and workers' rights? You have the floor.
I support a housing wage, which is actually closer to $20 an hour. I commend Councilmember Brossette for pushing for the $15 an hour minimum wage, but that has to be the floor and not the ceiling. We must ensure that those that work in the city can also live in the city. I also fully support a worker's right to unionize. I was disheartened to see that Councilmember Banks and this council did not come out in support of the hoppers when they were striking. It's a problem. We must support our city workers and all of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Harris, posing the same question to you. Do you support a living wage and other policies that center people and workers' rights?
I do. The average hotel housekeeper who's been on the job 10 years makes $10 an hour. Let that sink in. $10 an hour gets you what? Especially in a city like this where transportation is hard, where we have water shutoffs and there's no water available for hours, where you might fall into a pothole with your car and have a tire that is blown out because the streets are so bad. So we need to really pay a living wage and actually a cost of living and include a cost of living increase in that living wage to our workers. I absolutely support this and I will continue to support it as your next city council person.
Thank you so much, Ms. Harris. Moving to Councilmember Banks, posing the same question to you. Do you support a living wage and other policies that center people and workers' rights?
I have, and I will continue to. I'm the only candidate in this race that is endorsed by the labor unions. There's a reason for that. And I have been standing up to increase wages since I've been there. And I'm glad we got to 15, but that's not enough. I will continue to push. But I do want to address one point, and I want to thank both of my opponents for stating this. The boxing club and the ice cream parlor were both vehemently opposed by the neighbors. I'm glad they're showing the contrast between someone who will stand up for the neighbors and someone who will stand up for the developers. I encourage all of you listeners to go take a look at both of those hearings. The neighborhoods came out in mass to oppose both of them. I side with the neighbors because the neighbors' quality of life is first and foremost. A petition with 300 signatures of people that live in Slidell and across the river don't carry any weight when you've got people who live next door to the facility saying they don't want it. I will continue to stand up for the neighborhoods and the people that live there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Banks. Moving to our next question. The New Orleans City Council is unique in that it is the regulatory body for Energy New Orleans. There are community concerns about raising energy costs, particularly after Hurricane Ida. How will you ensure that communities do not bear the brunt of corporate costs? And I'll start with Ms. Harris.
I applaud Councilperson Moreno for taking a hard but fair stance against Entergy by asking to investigate what exactly happened during Ida. I live in a neighborhood where you look up and you see rusted out transformers, there are wires on the ground. And so clearly Entergy has not been doing its job. But let me say this, Entergy is also passing along the cost of its paid lobbyists and consultants on to the consumers in New Orleans. I've never been a paid consultant of Entergy. I've never been an employee of Entergy, unlike our current council person. So I think that we need to clean that up, make sure that there is no influence by these paid lobbyists, and bring any regulatory oversight in-house so that we have the experience and expertise that is not tainted by corporate money to regulate properly our utilities. And that includes Sewer and Water Board. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Harris. Mr. Banks, posing the same question to you. How will you ensure that communities do not bear the brunt of corporate costs such as those incurred by Energy New Orleans?
We will continue to hold Energy accountable. I'm very proud of my record. No one in this race has experience in utility regulation that I do. I have worked for both sides. I worked not only for Energy, but I also worked for the city council. That speaks volumes about understanding how the process works, and that the council's advisors hired me after I left Entergy. The truth of the matter is I understand utility regulation. I will continue to hold them accountable and understand that Entergy New Orleans is what the council regulates, not all of Entergy. So all the talk about the transmission lines that collapsed over Jefferson Parish, the city council of New Orleans doesn't regulate, but that shows the naivety of my opponents. They don't understand what they're supposed to be regulating. We regulate Entergy New Orleans and not all of Entergy, but I will continue to hold Entergy of New Orleans accountable.
Thank you, Councilmember Banks. Ms. Saplatal, same question. How will you ensure that communities do not bear the brunt of corporate costs?
Councilmember Banks says that he holds Entergy accountable, but actually he was the only council member to vote not to fine Entergy $1 million in 2019. So I don't see how he can say that he's holding them accountable. The only one. We have to hold Entergy accountable. I was the only candidate to release a plan to hold Entergy accountable and to get reliable energy services before Ida hit. It was a talking point, popular talking point now, but it was important to me before, and it will continue to be important to me. I vow to not allow Entergy to pass along storm-related costs when they are found liable for their failure to harden their system. The storm recovery account is great, except for when Entergy can just go in and take however much they want out of it without even getting council approval. The law shouldn't be written that way, but that's how it was, and that's a problem, and it should be changed. I also think we need to reduce.
Go ahead.
We need to reduce costs by expanding the bureau office. We need to stop paying our consultants who Councilmember Banks has worked for in the past, the $7 million a year that we are paying them. We need to bring all of it in-house or as much as we can get the experts that we have so we don't have to worry whether or not they're doing something to actually benefit New Orleans or to benefit their own pockets. We must do a better job of holding energy accountable and requiring them to deliver to New Orleanians in good and bad weather.
Thank you so much, Ms. Zapletal. Next question I'm going to pose first to you again, Ms. Zapletal. And that question is this: New Orleans is receiving over $100 million in federal American Rescue Plan funding. What do you think is the best use of these funds to promote an equitable recovery from Hurricane Ida and from COVID-19?
The American Rescue Plan, and also I'm going to include the infrastructure bill that will most likely be passed, can be truly transformational for New Orleans. But in order for them to be transformational, we must create a reflective vision. The budgeting process must be participatory, ensuring that residents are given a seat at the table. Just like the recovery dollars after Katrina truly transformed our levee system, I believe ARP and the infrastructure bill funds can provide major investments in future-proofing our city. We as a city must be forward-thinking and invest in our infrastructure if we are going to continue to be resilient storm after storm. We should prioritize our failing sewage system and our utility transmission lines when it comes to ARP and infrastructure dollars.
Thank you. Ms. Harris, same question to you. What do you think is the best use of these federal dollars to promote an equitable recovery from Hurricane Ida and from COVID-19?
Sure, this needs to go beyond budgetary hole plugging. What we need to do is use the money to use and invest in pilot programs that can move the city forward. Pilot programs like anti-violence programs in our schools to make sure our kids have opportunities that are beyond the current opportunities provided. Apprenticeship programs so that they see opportunity in New Orleans and not in crime. So we need to use that money for pilot programs, including programs to make sure there are wraparound services for formerly incarcerated people. I do believe that we need to have community input. I have always said throughout this campaign that I am not the expert on everything. What I'm good at is getting the experts and the people who should have input in a room and hashing it out. I did that at Loyola. I did that for 20 years as a lawyer. So I think that we need to get in a room with the people who are the experts, with the people who we can impact the best, and make sure that we're using this money in a way that is productive. And again, just doesn't go to plugging budgetary shortfalls. This is a windfall. This is how we need to look at it. This is money coming out of the sky. And what is the best way to use it? I, as councilperson, can't decide that best way. The other council members can't. What we need to really have is constituent input. And I absolutely think that process can go forward in a way that makes sense and then implement what comes out of those. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Harris. Councilmember Banks, same question. What do you think is the best use of federal dollars to promote an equitable recovery from Hurricane Ida and from COVID-19?
The number one and the central common denominator in this city is drainage. You may never use any other service, but everybody in this city uses the drainage system. Our number one priority needs to be to firm up and to modernize the city's sewer and water and drainage system. That is something that is life critical to all of us. I would like to see those dollars used to make the system modern so that it can function every time and not sometime. Now, we got through the storm with relative light damage, little flooding, but the truth is we were very lucky. We need to make sure that we invest in something that is going to be lifetime for a long time for all of us. And getting our city's infrastructure over there with water, sewer, and drainage would be my first priority for using those dollars.
Thanks so much, Councilmember Banks. Now each candidate will have an opportunity to leave their final impressions on voters. We're going to start with Councilmember Banks and go down the row. Please tell our viewers, voting public tonight, why you would be the best candidate and answer any final concerns that folks may have. Councilmember Banks.
I have a record that is clear that everyone can see. I'm not going to sit here and make promises that I can't keep. I've never done that. I have stood up to everything that I've said. Now, my opponents want to come up with all kinds of twisted innuendos and facts that they have made up, which really aren't facts. The truth of the matter is, judge me by what I've done and not by what I've said. I don't speak double talk. I don't have one message for one group and bring another to another. I won't talk about I want to support affordable housing and then file a lawsuit to stop it. I was not put in this race as a political vendetta by someone who's mad because they didn't get an endorsement for an office that they wanted. The truth of the matter is I'm running because I want New Orleans to be as best as it can be for all of us. I've got a record of showing that I will be committed to all of our citizens, and I will continue to work to make New Orleans as best as it can be. And I look forward to serving again. I would ask you all for your prayers and support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Banks. Ms. Harris, could you give voters last impressions of you?
Sure, and thank you, Jessica, for moderating this. I think you can see by viewing this that there are real differences between the candidate. But let me just point this out. If you want things to continue as they're going, by all means, vote for the incumbent. But what I represent is real change. The incumbent just today in NOLA.com said that he has no power over crime. He has no power over infrastructure. My question to you and what you should be asking is, then what are we paying him for? Why do we need a city council if he has no control over these basic quality of life decisions and actions? So what you need is a fresh face, a fresh voice, someone who can build connections, who can problem solve. I've done all of that throughout my legal career. I've helped stabilize Loyola University, one of our premier institutions in New Orleans. And again, it's like running a small city. I've done this and I can do it for the city. Number 41 on the ballot. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ms. Harris. Ms. Zaplatal, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much to the Urban League of Louisiana and the Power Coalition for putting this forum on tonight. It is so important that voters hear from the candidates so they can make informed decisions. And to set the record straight, the neighborhood association sued the school board to keep a community school open. So I just want to put that out there. If anything, Hurricane Ida has shown us that we need real change, and we need it now. We cannot continue to accept basic failures of our city government as status quo. Our current council member has failed time and time again to hold the administration accountable. That must change now. Over the past 4 years, crime has gotten worse, city services have gotten worse, and power reliability has gotten worse. So I ask you, what has Jay Banks really done? Do you want the status quo for 4 more years, or are you ready for real change? If you're tired of old school political machines and want a proven leader with real results, vote Rella, number 44.
Thank you so much, Ms. Zaplatal, and thank you, District B candidates, for joining us tonight. I'm going to now hand it over to Nicole Jolly for some final remarks.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for moderating this evening's forum. Thank you so much, candidates, for taking the time this evening to speak with us and with the voting public. I'm going to take a few minutes. You can turn off your cameras, candidates, and we will do a few final reminders as we head into election season, making sure that those who are with us know the dates. First, we have 2 more forums coming up this week that we are again hosting in partnership with the Power Coalition. Tomorrow evening, we will have candidates from City Council Districts C and E. And then Thursday evening, we will hear from District D. So we hope that even if you are not part of those districts, that you will tell those in your networks to make sure that they tune in and register so that they can hear from the candidates from their districts. And then we have the voter registration deadlines coming up later this month. The deadline to register to vote in this upcoming election in person or by mail is October 13th. And then you will have until October 23rd to register to vote online. You can go to govote.com to register to vote online. And then important changes to the election dates since Hurricane Ida. The dates did get pushed back, so we want to make sure that everyone is aware that early voting will now be from October 30th to November 6th. And the polls will be open for early voting from 8:30 to 6. And then Election Day is now on November 13th. So please mark your calendars for Election Day, Saturday, November 13th. And then I would like to hand it over to our partner, Ashley Shelton, to give some information about redistricting. This is an important priority for both the Urban League and the Power Coalition, and we want to make sure that everyone on this forum has the information they need to be engaged in this critical process. Ashley.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Yes, so again, yes, our election has been moved. It is definitely November 13th. We want to make sure folks have those new dates. And so thanks for sharing those, Nicole. Also wanted to kind of talk to you all as well about redistricting. You know, this is a process that happens once every 10 years following the decennial census. And we completed the census last year. It was turned in late, so the timeline is a little off. But the census data basically allows us to redraw the political maps here in the state of Louisiana. So both congressional, state legislature, city councils, school boards, and more. And so this process will be going on both at the local level in New Orleans as well as legislatively. You know, the goal of redistricting is to accurately reflect the population and to allow that population to elect candidates of choice. And so if you live in a district that doesn't allow you or your neighbors to have voice, then, clearly, like that's problematic. And so what redistricting tries to do is allow us to redraw the maps in a way that takes into account the growth of our communities, both by race and also by communities of interest, which can be communities that identify by race or by issue area, whether it be environmental justice or other issues. And so we hope that you'll get engaged. The roadshow is the legislature is putting on a roadshow where community will be able to give comment. And those dates, as you can see, starting October 20th, on Wednesday, they're going to be starting in Monroe. And this is on the record. And this is really important because this is the first time Louisiana will be doing redistricting without Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act in place. And so in order to get a fair and equitable redistricting process, we need community to give input because of the changes and the shifts, the state of Louisiana is Blacker and browner. And because of that, where are there opportunities to ensure that everyone can elect candidates of choice, and where are there opportunity districts in our communities? And so you'll see that for New Orleans, it's going to be January 5th from 5:30 to 8:30. Please visit the Power Coalition website at powercoalition.org. We've got several redistricting resources. We also have, staff in New Orleans that can work with you if you want to have a community meeting, if you want support or training on maps, and also too how to give comment. We're working with several partners, including the Urban League, to make sure that folks can have a robust experience and make sure that their comments are heard and on the record. And so please take some time out. This is certainly for the state, the congressional and state process, but also too, the local process is underway in New Orleans, and it's critical that your voice is heard, because if we do indeed have to go to a lawsuit, the only thing that will make the biggest difference are maps drawn by community and the voice of community. So thank you very much, and want to thank all of our candidates for participating tonight. And we certainly appreciated your willingness to be thoughtful in your reflections on the questions, and certainly thank you to our moderator, who was amazing. So thank you all, and certainly the Urban League for tonight's forum.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, everyone who attended tonight. Hopefully we will see you tomorrow and Thursday for our next forums. Have a good night.